Hey guys, Brian here with BPS Customs. Today we're going to be working on Project Sunrise. This is going to be part 3 in the video series, so if you guys haven't seen part 1 or part 2, I recommend going and checking them out first. But after that, come back, we're really going to get into the water cooling aspect of this build and see how far we get today. Alright, so when we last left this project, I had this top radiator installed and I let you guys know that I needed to drill a new pass-through hole because the first one I drilled wasn't exactly right. Well, you could see that right here. So the old pass-through hole is on the right and the new one is right here. Now I drilled this new hole, I put the pass-through in, and this is where we're going to pass the coolant from the radiator, which is going to be up there, down through and into the back portion of the case. This hole up here, this original hole, was in the wrong place. It wasn't going to be really feasible for me to run some tubing from the radiator down to that hole without doing a big loop-de-loo, and that's not really ideal. So this new hole is going to be in a much better location. I'm going to put the radiator in right now, and we're going to run the first tubing run, and then we're going to install the front radiator, and we're going to consider how we're going to do the rest of the line. Okay, so we've reached another point where I want to stop and fill you guys in as far as what's been happening. So we got, as you can see, we got the front radiator in, and up here you can see that point that I was concerned about being able to reach. I was able to configure some tubing and some fittings up there, and now we have a path from the top radiator back through the back of the case through this pass-through. But if we zoom back out, you can see that I actually had to take out I actually took out both graphics cards, and this is sagging a little bit right now because this bracket will actually help hold it up when the two cards are in there together. When I had it in there before, when I had them in there before, this was not sagging, so I'm not overly concerned about this sagging. It'll be fine. But the reason that I had to take them out was because I had to do this bend back here, and getting my hand in here with the graphics card here was basically impossible. So I had to take this out to do this bend, and this bend goes back to the other pass-through in the case. So what's going to happen with this is the pump's going to be sitting behind this wall, and it's going to be able to pump coolant from here, the top radiator, down to the reservoir behind the motherboard tray, and it'll come out through this tube here. Now, I don't know if you guys can see this. I guess, yeah, it looks like you probably can. This tube here, when I installed it, is a little bit crooked, but I can maneuver this so that it is straight. And I think that once I have all the tubing in place for this reservoir, I don't think that this is going to move anymore. And the reason that this looked a little crooked was because this kind of came, see, I can move it down a little bit. But once I have all the tubing in place, this isn't going to move at all, and this tube will remain straight. But you can see there's some scratches on this tube, and the finish, the satin finish on these tubes really is delicate. And when I was screwing on these fittings, it scratched the tube, and I'm hoping that when it is full of coolant, you won't really see the scratches. I mean, I suppose I could always redo it if this becomes a problem. But you can see back there, attached to the other side of the radiator, I have a little extender and a 90. So the reason I put the GPU back in the case is because down here we have this 90, and the tube's going to come up like this, and then over, and then like this to connect here to this point, and then it'll go up through these GPUs. So that's where I'm at now, and I'm going to continue to run some tube. Alright, so we got the whole bottom compartment done now. This actually took me a lot longer than I thought because cutting this tubing is very similar to cutting acrylic and not PETG. PETG you could usually cut with like one of these jobs or one of these jobs, and you can't do that with this satin tubing because it's acrylic. So what you have to do, or what I've been doing, is I've actually been using a Dremel tool with a plastic cutting disc, and it's pretty tedious. But the bottom compartment is done. All these runs look pretty clean to me. This still bothers me like a little bit, these scratches here. I'm really hoping that it's not an issue in the final build. But yeah, this looks pretty good so far. And as you can see, this whole thing up here still needs to be completed. So I'm going to go ahead and work on that now. Alright, loop's all done. Let's check it out. Let's see how I put it together. So I showed you the bottom section already down here. Just quickly run through that again. But you can see the pass-through that goes back through the case. And my original intent was to have the loop running this way. So that would mean that it would come out into the reservoir, into the radiator, out here, up into the GPUs, and then up this way. But what ended up happening is, because of the way I needed to run this section of the tube, I wanted to come out and over and then up into here, because this is the in port over here. This is the in on the block. So you can't go in this way. So because of the way I ended up having to run this tube, this was the best way for me to do this configuration over here. So I couldn't, now I have to reverse the loop. Now I have to run like here, this into this radiator, out into the block. Ooh, excuse me, going through puberty. Into the block, out here, and then into the GPUs. So I had to reverse the order of the loop, but I think it still came out looking really good. And now I have to install the pump, and then I guess we'll get to testing. So I've been test filling this loop, and I've encountered a problem that I can't really figure out. What I did was, the pump is in the back, as we talked about before, and it circulates the water through the pass-through fittings, and then into the radiators, and then down through loop into this radiator, and then out the back. There is some kind of a blockage somewhere in here, because I tested the pump running a loop on itself, and it pumps just fine. I even added in a reservoir, and it had no problem pumping the water through the reservoir. But as soon as I hook it up to this loop, there's no return. Like the water, you could, I don't know if, maybe if I could zoom in here. There's some distilled water down there. There's some distilled water in this tube. It trickles through the system, but I can't get any kind of significant pressure and flow. So I don't really know where the blockage is. I'm thinking that it actually might be up here with this that I put together up here, because these are two compression fittings with a small piece of soft tube in between. Maybe they're not lined up right because the compression fittings are actually touching, like the tips of them are touching. And I don't really know where else there could potentially be a blockage. This down here is clear of obstruction. Like you could see it, because obviously you could see through the tube, but there's nothing blocking in here. So my theory is that because there is an obstruction that's preventing the loop from becoming pressurized and creating suction and allowing the coolant to pass through all the components. So it's either a blockage up here, or it's possible that there is a blockage inside a radiator or inside a block that's preventing water flow, and also then as a result preventing airflow and preventing the water from even moving really at all. This is going to be extremely difficult to diagnose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave you with this picture of the system. I think it looks pretty good for now. Obviously it would look better with some coolant and, you know, being functional. That would help. But the loop is basically done. But what I'm going to have to do is disassemble it and figure out where the blockage is, which could take quite a bit of time. Man, this is actually turning into one of the longest projects I have ever done, and it wasn't supposed to be this complicated. So thanks for watching, guys, and you know, get subscribed so you can see my next misadventure with Project Sunrise. Thanks for watching.